I've had my sights set on creating a summoner build for a few months now, and finally, here it is. So summoners can struggle in the early levels of BG3 due to the fact that there are no potent elemental summons until level 7 at the earliest. However, it's definitely possible to be a full elemental caster and a summoner at the same time, so let's explore that idea. Firstly, the disclaimers. Like always, this is a concept first and optimized second style build, focusing on the character's story and not the best possible damage. This build is focusing on the three main elements, fire, lightning, and ice. It's a fun build to play, but summoning wise, it does take a few levels to get started. If you are just looking for optimization tips, I will add a few at the end of the video, so if that's all you're after, check the timestamps. If you missed the backstory for this build, here's a link to that. But most importantly, you are a noble from Elturel. You're a master of diplomacy, adept in dealing with man, devil, or more. Your ability to skillfully navigate these situations is second to none, and you have always believed in talking first and violence only as a last resort. Although, should your charisma ever fail you, your magical prowess and connection to the elemental plane will keep those foes in check. Okay, let's get into the build. Growing up, you were trained in many areas, and one of those was the art of war. You learnt many weapons, martial or otherwise, and of course were trained in the use of armor. You trained daily and built quite a muscular frame as a result. Though you were never truly invested in the more mundane forms of combat, you still trained your body and continue to this day. After escaping your pod on the Nautiloid, your training took over. You are struggling to reach the weave with the tadpole in your head, and so character creation, and we are starting as a fighter. There are a few reasons for this, but really it boils down to constitution saving throw proficiency and heavy armor proficiency. That's not all we get for being a fighter though. We start the game with a set of medium armor, and I like to think we were abducted during a training session. All the armor is matching perfectly, and I just think it gives me that vibe. We also get second wind, giving us a nice heal for our bonus action early in the game, and finally we get a fighting style. And defense gives us one additional AC or armor class while we're wearing armor. For our backstory, we are a noble of course, giving us proficiency in persuasion and history. For our stats, we are going 8 in strength, and I wish this could be higher. Roleplay wise, it does feel a little weird not having it, but it's the only one that I'm willing to completely dump. 10 in dexterity, and we will be using heavy armor, so we don't need a high dexterity modifier. I also think that being later in the order suggests that you are spending that time communing with the elements, preparing your spells before you cast them. 14 in constitution, 14 in intelligence, plus 2 here for 16, 10 in wisdom, and 15 in charisma plus 1 here. Now this stat block might seem a little weird as we are an intelligence-based caster and we are taking 16 in charisma. This is for roleplay of course, as this stat governs persuasion, deception, and intimidation checks, and we're going to be using those with this build. For our proficiencies, and I failed to mention earlier, we are playing a human, and the main benefit of that is we gain an additional proficiency choice. For us, that's going to be Arcana, and for our other two proficiencies, we are taking Intimidation and Insight. Perfect, character creation done. Now find yourself a finesse weapon, fight your way off the ship and on to level 2. Shortly after leaving the ship, you begin to feel your connection with the weave, and more importantly, the elemental planes return. Specifically, the elemental plane of air. Your lightning spells are the first to return to you, although the other planes return as well, to a lesser degree. While you are not strong enough yet to call your companions to your aid, you can muster the strength to command the cantrips and lesser elemental spells as we take our first level in Wizard. So we will now be a wizard from here on out, and this build really comes down to our spell and gear choices. We can't afford to have any other detours as we need to reach level 6 spell slots. There are a few caveats to this which I'll discuss at the end. So level 1 wizard, and for our 3 cantrips we are taking the elemental options here in Firebolt and Shocking Grasp. You can also take Ray of Frost here, completing the trio, however I'll save that for later and take Friends here instead. I find that while the skill checks get harder as the game progresses, they can be the hardest at the start of the game while you have no gear or spells to add to the checks, so giving yourself an early advantage on these charisma checks will really help. For spells, we are going to grab the Lightning Suite with Witch Bolt, Thunderwave, and Chromatic Orb. Then let's grab Shield for our defensive reaction, Find Familiar for our first summon of the build, and Featherfall as a manipulation of the air around us. In my experience, you are able to summon the familiar out of combat, then prepare a different spell letting you keep the summon but have a more useful spell on hand in combat. Finally, for taking Wizard we get the Arcane Recovery skill, one I have a tendency to gloss over in my Wizard builds, giving you the ability to spend Arcane Recovery charges to restore spell slots. You get one of these charges on levels 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11, and it costs the number of charges equal to the spell slot you want to recover, up to 5th level spell slots consuming 5 charges. Level 3 and we get our Wizard subclass. For us as a conjurer of elemental forces, this is the School of Conjuration, giving us a casting of the Create Water spell once per short rest. This can seem underwhelming as a subclass feature, and in some ways it is. However, as a wizard, you wouldn't get access to this spell otherwise, and it's a great way to get access to the Wet status effect. This status effect can interact with our existing lightning spells, causing them to deal double damage to wet targets. Other than that, we hold out for our more potent subclass features. Moving on from there, we get 2 more level 1 spells. You have noticed slowly over the last few days your connection with the elemental plane of fire has been strengthening all the time, and you are feeling strong enough now to at the very least summon a jet of flames from your hands. So let's grab Burning Hands here, as it is the first spell we pick up as a result of our strengthening connection to that plane. For our other spell, pick your favorite here and on to level 4. So on this level we get our level 2 spells, and our connection with the plane of fire is only growing, to the point where we are now strong enough to summon in the least of the denizens of the elemental planes, a flaming sphere. Smoldering rock alight with magical flames. This mass of volcanic rock requires your concentration and is able to attack for 2d6 fire damage, ignite flammable surfaces, and possesses a flaming aura, dealing an additional 2d6 to any enemy foolish enough to end their turn next to the sphere. Though the sphere's real strength is in body blocking your enemies, place this sphere in a narrow corridor or in a doorway and watch your enemies attack it while you stand back and lob spells from the distance. Second on this level, we get Scorching Ray, another blessing of the plane of fire. This spell's multiple beams will become very important for us in a few levels, but that's it for this level. Level 5, and of course following air and fire comes the plane of water, expanding further, and in so doing returns to us the ability to cast our icy spells. Ray of Frost is first, followed closely by Ice Knife, a spell I have yet to recommend for any of my builds, dealing piercing and cold damage, also leaving an ice surface on the ground beneath the target. With the exception of the Thunder variant of Chromatic Sphere, it also has the highest raw damage potential of any of the level 1 spells. Following this, I think it's a great time to pick up Misty Step for our second spell on this level for a bit of battlefield mobility. Finally, we get a feat on this level, and we have 2 options. First is Warcaster, giving us advantage on our concentration saving throws. However, we do already have constitution saving throw proficiency and heavy armor, so it is a valid option but overkill I think. I'm opting for the ability score improvement instead, bumping our intelligence to 18, increasing our attack rolls and difficulty checks. While 3 of the elemental planes have opened their connections with you again, the plane of Earth has remained quiet in your mind. It is a worry that will have to wait as you have more pressing matters to deal with, however, you do worry. You spent many years forging friendships and working with the elementals to form a lasting bond. If that relationship has been damaged, you have to know why. Though with that said, your mastery over lightning and fire has almost completely returned to the level prior to abduction, as you reach level 6 and unlock 3rd level spells, taking the favorites of Fireball and Lightning Bolt. This gives you 2 fantastic options with high damage in different situations. Lightning Bolt to hit a long line of enemies, and Fireball to devastate a large cluster of foes. Okay, halftime, and this won't be a long one as we can jump straight into gear. For this build, you have one essential item that you need to get, and luckily it's in Act 1. The Abyss Beckoner's Gloves gives you a toggleable ability which grants all your summons in an area around you resistance to all damage types except Psychic. Absolutely wild for a summoner focused build and makes your minions incredibly durable. There is a downside though that needs to be managed. At the start of their turn, any summon affected by the aura has to succeed a wisdom saving throw or go mad attacking whatever is closest to them, including you and your party. Fortunately, like I mentioned, it is a toggleable effect, so you can leave it off out of combat. In combat, however, you need to ensure your minions are surrounded by enemies, then it won't even matter. I don't love the roleplay implications of this item as you are not forcing your summons into service. though the item is just too powerful for any summoner build to really pass up. Some other items for Act 1 though include the usual lightning gear. I've mentioned this in most of my caster builds, so feel free to check it out in one of those videos. The Necklace of Elemental Augmentation is a great pickup, adding a significant damage boost to your cantrips. Morning Frost, increasing your cold damage and causing cold vulnerability. Creation's Echo, giving you on-demand resistance to any damage type that you possess. Boots of Striding to help you with concentration saving throws, and Adamantine Splint Armor, reducing the damage you take significantly and giving you a solid armor class since you have no dexterity. In Act 2, the Cloak of Elemental Absorption gives you some damage reduction and a slight damage boost for one attack, and the Hat of Fire Acuity is a must-have for this build. This increases your spell attack rolls and difficulty checks by 1 per stack, with a max of 7 stacks. Area spells only count as 1 hit, however attacks with multiple hits like Scorching Ray each gives you 2 stacks, meaning one cast of Scorching Ray could give you up to 7 stacks on one turn. You won't get many other increases to your attack rolls with this build, so I would definitely do what you can to get this hat. Finally, in Act 3 there is the Cloak of the Weave, giving you a slight damage bump, Amulet of Greater Health, boosting your health, Armor of Persistence as a significant damage reduction if your main tank or melee character doesn't need it, Staff of Spell Power for the free spell slot and increased hit chance. Finally, Marco Heshkir is the best staff in the game, granting you Kareska's favor, expanding your available spells and increasing the damage of the spells of that element. There are other elemental effects like Heat and Encrusted with Frost, which we will touch on but in other builds since your glove slot is already taken. For now though, I just want to also mention an interaction to be mindful of. While the Wet status and the Chilled status are both great for vulnerabilities, do be aware they also give the target resistance to fire damage. So don't go throwing a fireball into a pack of enemies right after dousing them with rain. Okay, halftime over, let's get back into the build. You have never felt this powerful before. Of course, you have been able to summon your elemental companions to the mortal plane, but only with the help of scrolls or magic circles. You can feel your power swelling and you walk the elemental planes in your dreams, communing with those who might aid you and your companions. Many will not offer help directly, although they do offer what help they can, often in the form of mastery over their domain. Those of the domain of water show you how to create a localized storm, blanketing an area in ice and snow, making it impossible to concentrate on a spell for any length of time. And the domain of air even teach you how to twist the weaves of air in a way that allows you to fly. So on this level we are of course taking Sleet Storm and Fly as our 2 spells. Along with that, we also get an interesting skill as part of our Conjuration subclass, Benign Transposition Teleport, letting us either teleport anywhere in range or we can target an ally and swap places with them. This tooltip is misleading, mentioning it only being available once per long rest. What it doesn't mention is that it recharges anytime you cast a Conjuration spell of level 1 or higher, giving you access to this many times per long rest. This skill is great at getting yourself out of a tight spot, but even better for positioning your summons. Simply run into the middle of a group of enemies and switch places, letting you safely activate your Abyss Beckoner's gloves before their turn. Alternatively, use this to get a melee combatant into the fray and potentially double their movement on their turn since they don't need to spend it moving into position. This is a very versatile and creative effect, so use it wisely. Just as you find yourself starting to give up hope that the denizens of the plane of Earth will aid you, or even speak with you for that matter, you find yourself confronted with 2 mud mephits, carrying with them the will of the elemental plane of Earth. They, along with the ice mephits of the plane of water and the azure of the plane of fire, come to you in your camp offering you their aid. They will fight with you in the name of the elemental planes. So finally, on level 8, we get our first real summons in the form of Conjure Minor Elemental. This comes in the 3 forms I just mentioned. Firstly, we get the Mud and Ice mephits. You can conjure 2 of these with a single cast, and they have similar abilities just flavored based on the elemental type. Each type gets a breath attack, a ranged projectile, and a melee attack. They can fly, and when they die, they explode, dealing damage to anything around them. Next, we have the Azure, a single summon with double the health, armor class, and although reduced damage, a larger number of skills. They have Weakening Strike, Concussive Smash, Backbreaker, Searing Smite, and Overheat, dealing damage in an AoE around themselves. All the options have their place, however I tended to opt for the ice methods mostly. The cold damage was often magnified due to my status effects, however if I didn't want the enemies to become fire resistant, they still worked because they didn't directly cause the chilled or wet conditions. One thing to mention is that once one of your methods dies, you can safely summon in an Azure also, giving you a single tankier summon while maintaining a second summon with it. We do also get another spell on this level though, and we are taking Ice Storm, dealing a significant amount of damage and working great with your methods since they fly and are not affected by the large ice surface left behind by the spell. Level 9 and you are now able to summon your allies at will, something you have never been able to do before. Twisting the weave to your purposes, you have of course also worked out how to send them home once they have aided you. However, this is not reserved strictly for allies, banishing any who are not welcome on the mortal plane back to their own dimension. 2 more spells on this level and we are grabbing Banishment and Wall of Flames. We also get another feat and it's time to make a choice. Will you favor one of the elements over the others, taking the Elemental Adept feat, gaining resistance to the element and higher damage potential, or will you spread yourself more evenly across the 4, taking another increase to your intelligence, boosting it to 20. I'll increase my intelligence for this video, but I encourage you try out the Elemental Adept feat. Success after success, you are unparalleled in combat now, even though the threat still looms. Word of the Absolute and its cult has spread far, and your allies carried news of it even into the elemental planes, where the rulers there debate how to combat the threat. They treat with you, not the leaders but the emissaries from each plane, promising you aid, and more specifically, their aid, as they have decided to assist you personally. They even speak to you of how to increase their power further if only you have the will to do it. So level 10 and we get level 5 spells, most importantly the Conjure Elemental spell. Each of the 4 elementals conjured here offer a multi-attack and teleport. From there, each offers a different option in terms of melee or ranged attacks and status effects. The Water Elemental offers the Brittle status and deals bonus damage to chilled targets. The Fire burns enemies and deals bonus damage to burning enemies. Earth offers Reverberation and bonus damage to prone enemies. And finally, Air shocks targets and deals bonus damage if shocked. All great, all situational, take your pick for what the situation requires. We also get a second spell here though, and I really like Wall of Stone, our only true earthen spell, completely blocking a path, keeping enemies out or in, and blocking all line of sight from the outside. A fantastic way to split your enemies and take them down as you please. Summoning is truly second nature to you now. You are even able to take blows in combat without losing concentration on the strands of weave holding them in the mortal plane. You have even expanded your knowledge of the summoning rituals, having a complete understanding of how the weaves work, letting you even hijack the summoning magic used on other elementals or even more. So level 11 and we have the final perk of the Conjuration subclass, Focused Conjuration, letting you maintain concentration on conjuration spells even through being damaged. Your more potent summons don't require concentration, however Flaming Sphere, if you choose to use it, does. For a cantrip on this level, pick your favorite. For spells, however, definitely pick Cone of Cold here, dealing significant damage in an area in front of you. And Planar Binding, letting you, as mentioned, take control of a celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend creature for up to 10 turns. Several important NPCs are immune to this spell, but you might be surprised which NPCs are not immune. Finally, level 12 and your will is iron. There is no turning back now and the final confrontation is upon you. You have no way out but a single blessing. You have learned the way to empower your companions with your own magical power, bolstering their strength to incredible degrees. There is a cost, however, bound to armor, and given great weapons of war, your elemental companions are no longer simply elementals. They are now myrmidons, sacrificing their own will and ambition to increase their strength to fight the coming threat. A sacrifice they make willingly, but that does not make it any easier on you. So as you may have noticed, your Conjure Elemental spell now has 8 variants. 4 variants use the 5th level spell slot, though there are also 4 new variants, the Myrmidons, using your single 6th level slot. These ultimate elementals have a variety of abilities from heals to silence, invisibility to haste. I won't list them all here, but they are the ultimate manifestation of your elemental power and connection to the elemental planes. Now you do also get 2 spells, and I will recommend taking Chain Lightning and Otaluk's Freezing Sphere here. However, you will not find a whole lot of opportunities to use them since you only have one 6th level spell slot. Although if you do have an item to recover that spell slot, these might come in handy. So we went right to the end there with the narrative for a change, and I tried to leave the finer details of the roleplay open a bit more so you guys can fit your own narratives to the character. Let me know if you like that format in the comments. By the end of the game, you have access to several elementals at once. They aren't exclusive, and you can have 2 minor elementals, your Myrmidon and your Flaming Sphere all out at once. And this build should be great fun to play, even if it does take a bit to get started. Optimization wise, I would be remiss to mention that of course the stat block is not optimal, and if you take anything other than heavy armor, you will have to ditch some of your charisma for dexterity. Next, you don't necessarily have to take fighter and then wizard all the way. You technically have 3 levels to play with, since you only need to get to 5th level spells or level 9 with wizard. You could take any other spellcasting class with the exception of warlock for the other 3 levels if you so choose, as you will still get to 6th level spell slots. Tempest or Light Domain Cleric could be a good option if you want to play more of one element than the others. Or Draconic Sorcerer gives quite a few buffs early on, along with Quicken and Twin spell by level 3 if you wanted to make use of meta magic. Other than that, there are a few summons you could access if you are just summoning for summoning's sake. Animate Dead is the earliest summon available via level ups, and there is another unique summon available early in Act 1, the Scroll of Summon Quasit. It can be learned by wizards and added to the spellbook, giving you permanent access to a summon as early as the Blighted Village. Finally, try to be strategic about the order in which you take your spells. If you intend to make use of the wet status early on, fire spells won't be very useful. Taking the fire spells later when they're more potent and you are less dependent on the status effect for one-shots, that will be much more effective. And that's that, another build done. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the build. Check out my other build guides, and it would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. Keep an eye out for my playthrough next week, and until then, see ya!